Hello everybody, welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, bringing a brand new review, and today I'm going to be talking about Nosferatu, which is now at cinemas worldwide, directed by Robert Eggers, written by Robert Eggers, and it is a remake of, I guess you could say, the film from the 1920s. A film I've been very, very excited to see, a film I've been anticipating, that I watched yesterday on its UK release date of New Year's Day. The first 2025 film review, which is quite exciting that we got to kickstart with something such as this. I know it came out in the States at Christmas Day, so yes, they got it a week before us. I know a lot of people have already seen it. It's done very well at the box office, which is great to see. I'm going to be giving my thoughts on that, my thoughts on the direction, and a couple of other things. But before I get into it, I do want to hear from people at home, so please do comment your thoughts on Nosferatu, whether you've seen the originals, whether you haven't, whether this is maybe your first Robert Eggers film as well. I'm really curious to know what people think. Now, I'm going to give you a bit of behind the scenes info. I've just recorded a 10-minute video which I've just binned because I was just all over the place. All over the place in the sense that I absolutely loved this film. And I didn't really conjure up much of a plan for reviewing it, which is very amateur. But there's so much to talk about that it's really hard for me not to get excited talking about it, which wouldn't have been good viewing for you guys at home. So I'm going to make this somewhat more structured. But before I start giving my thoughts on my history with, I guess you could say, Nosferatu and Dracula when we get there, I want to head people over to our social medias where we announce our videos. We're on, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Blue Sky now. We've got everything in our link tree at the description below. So when we've got new videos to announce, we'll share things we're working on. Maybe we're going to change a couple of things. It's a new year. Me and Tate are going to be live tomorrow. There's a lot of things to look forward to this year. It's the 10th anniversary of the channel in May. And there's plenty of other things happening. So head over to our social medias. It's where we announce stuff we're doing, what we're working on. That being said, let's talk Nosferatu. And you might be wondering, why did George mention Dracula then? Well, a few days ago I watched Bram Stoker. I keep calling him Bram Stoker, it's so frustrating. Bram Stoker's Dracula for the very first time. Now, I've not read the book. I'm not entirely familiar with the horror genre. I've never been too invested in it, if I'm completely honest. People are going to hate that, that's fine. But I will watch films in it. And I knew it was a Coppola film. I knew Gary Oldman's in it, he's one of my favourite actors. I just never got around to seeing it. And I saw it for the first time and I enjoyed it. I did not know, and I would have actually put off watching it if I'd have known that Nosferatu, the original film, was a German remake or a German adaptation of the book, changing names, cities, locations, and bits of the story. I would have steered clear because I got sort of 20 minutes in this. I was like, this is a bit similar to Dracula, I thought. Then it kept getting further, and it just sort of dawned on me. I was like, oh, it's an adaptation of the same text, of course. Got to the end credits and it's got the Bram Stoker Dracula thing, so I felt like an idiot at some point, but it didn't change how I viewed this film at all. I loved this film, first and foremost. I thought it was an excellent film. It's been spoken about for many years. I believe Robert Eggers was attached to it after The Witch came out. Obviously he would then go on to do The Lighthouse, which I loved, and he'd do The Northman, which is still one of my favourite films of 2022. He is a filmmaker that I will be seated for every film he does. I think he's actually one of the most interesting filmmakers working today. And I'm going to make an outrageous statement and say he is up there in terms of a Nolan type, where not only am I interested in his projects, but his approach to filmmaking. I don't just want to sit there talking about practical effects and whatnot, but with his background on production design, his sets look incredible. They look like real historic sets. It looks like a piece of history. And then you look at the costume department and the approach he has to making his films work. I think it's really interesting. I think he's maximizing the budgets that he's working with. On top of that, the storytelling is exceptional. The actors involved and the performances he gets out of his cast are right up there with established directors of decades. And I'm drawing parallels to early Nolan's career, where I think he's waiting on that first big bankable film that's going to make him a household name. Because I think as film fans, a lot of us know who he is and people will be familiar with his work. But the next step is, how do you make this filmmaker a household name at home? It's an art that's been struggling, I think, for many years now. It's very tough in modern filmmaking to see it, but I genuinely believe he's up there in terms of taking similar filmmaking routes as others before him. I hope that makes some sense. And on top of that, all of his films have been pretty great, is an understatement. And as I said, I'm going to be seated for whatever film he chooses to next, which he has chosen to do next, which I'll talk about at the end too. But yes, Robert Eggers as a filmmaker, I think he's quite incredible. And it's really exciting to see his career. I think now that Nosferatu is out of the way as well, just before I get into the film, because he's been attached to this for so long, the question, like an Nolan, becomes, what's next? It's not like a spoiled child that's not happy with what they've just got. I loved what I just got. And it's the excitement of knowing what's this filmmaker going to be doing next. It doesn't happen too often, and I just want to talk about that before I talk about this film. This film, though, I loved it. I'm not the biggest horror fan, as I've said before on the channel, but what I do like with horror film, I don't even know if it's horror, I don't know if it's a gothic film, I don't know what people would call this as. It's like it stands on its own. Maybe, I guess, there's like a whole vampire subgenre, which I know people are really into, but approaching this compared to other releases in recent years, there was something different, maybe because the filmmaker involved, but you look at the cast, you've got Lily Rose Depp, who I hadn't seen anything before, you've got Nicholas Hoult, you've got Aaron Taylor-Johnson, Emma Corrin appears, of course we get Willem Dafoe as well, and no doubt I'm missing a couple of others, but the cast involved I loved. On paper, outside of this, very British actually, but to see them working with a filmmaker, now of course Willem Dafoe worked with him multiple times. I know at some points Anya Taylor-Joy was attached to be in this, but obviously wasn't. As someone that hasn't seen Lily Rose Depp in anything, I thought she was amazing in this, and she is the emotional forefront of the film. She gives one of the best performances in this film. The film can't work without her, not just from a storytelling perspective, but if her performance doesn't work, it isn't believable, it doesn't have a resolution within itself, the film can't work, but it absolutely does, and it starts with her in the lead, and I think this is a film that's going to put her into the spotlight. I know she did that awful show last year that people spoke about on HBO, but this could be the film that a lot of filmmakers use and start looking at her to put in things. For all I know, she's probably got 5 great projects lined up already, but I think this shows she's ready with that next generation of actors and actresses breaking through within Hollywood. I thought she's incredible in this. I haven't spoken about Bill Skarsgård yet, who to me is the best thing in this film. The Skarsgård family, I love them, all of them. I'll watch pretty much anything they're in, not counting the remake of The Crow last year, but Bill Skarsgård in particular, maybe because of Pennywise from it was not like a commercial, I guess, but he had a great physical transition into that clown. You could see with his eyes, the facial expressions, what he was doing. There's some really funny and cool behind the scenes if people haven't seen them, but him being involved as Count Orlok, now for me, I don't have that history with Nosferatu, but I'm curious to see what's one of the Skarsgård brothers going to do as a vampire. And this is where we're going back into Robert Eggers' filmmaking. The marketing campaign to not reveal his face, to not reveal the voice. I think it might have been in a clip a few days before it came out in America, or someone leaked a clip, which is a bit shit if they did. But every single time he speaks, the audience's attention is locked in. And I was reading a bit into his performance. Now, obviously he's in prosthetics for a lot of it. No problem with that. We didn't get a Gary Oldman type just walking around the streets. But I read that he worked with like an opera singer or an opera trainer for his dialect coach. And every line of dialogue that you hear from him in this film was actually there on set. It wasn't done dubbed in, it wasn't done later on, it wasn't changed in post like some voice actors in performances such as this. It was all done on set, and I think it's quite scary, remarkable and incredible, all of those emotions in one, as to how an actor is able to do this on set. It must have been terrifying for everybody else, and at the same time it really shows the competency of Robert Eggers, that he's got these actors working with him who he can trust to do this on set, that they are doing it on set, they're doing it at the right time, they're not waiting to patch it and change loads of things later on. It's a really great part of this film, and he is so good. He's scary as well. I'm not the biggest horror fan, I wasn't scared as such, but as a character design, it wasn't just a remake, how scenes were shot. It's almost like theatre. I know that Robert Eggers worked in theatre before, but where the camera is placed in every single scene is always so interesting. And it's been like this with his other films, that there is just a stylized filmmaking that's above others. And I'm not sure if that statement even makes sense, but maybe because some filmmakers have 5 or 6 cameras on the go, they pick whatever shot's working best for them, they do it in post. This feels like, I want the camera here, this is how we're going to play out this scene, this is what we're going to do with this scene. And certainly with some of the longer takes, it means you can get better performances out of people, and you give them more time to do. Seeing is believing with cinema, and when you're not having so many quick close-ups, especially in horror, the framing of everyone in this is just remarkable. It's second to none. And to be frank, I'm kind of good it came out so late in December. I'd have loved it if this film had come out in October, had a festival run, should be all up for Oscars. I'm really on the hype train for this. Have I seen my favourite film of 2025? Maybe. It's New Year's Day. I'm not too sure, but it's a film that I think people are going to remember, people are going to speak of. And going back to what I was saying about Robert Eggers, I think this could be the film, the commercial film, that slowly starts to make him a household name. I mentioned that Nolan comparison. It's how do you make the jump from being known within the filmmaking community circuit, whatever you want to call it, to how do you engage with the general audience? How do they start to work out your projects? Of course, you get that from the director of this, from the director of that. And I think Nosferatu is the first step he's taking in becoming a household name. And I think his career is certainly venturing that far out. And that's kind of where I stand with this review. It's glowing as such, and it's been a remarkable film. And if I'm honest, I don't even really have criticisms of this film. I have criticisms for a lot of films, but maybe it's not going to work for everyone. Again, I haven't read Bram Stoker's Dracula. I've not seen the original Nosferatus. I don't know what's changed, what hasn't changed. But I just want to sort of talk about the set design, the production design, because very rarely with what do you call it, period films now, do you see these grand sets where it feels like a real town. And when we're in this, it felt like, not to bring up Merlin again, but the Oppenheimer, where guess what, they built the town that Oppenheimer did all the stuff on. So when they were walking around it, it looked real. This looked real. When you've got the plague and you've got thousands of rats, because we've spent so much time up and down those streets already in the 2 hours, it feels, yeah, this is the same place. It feels like a real location. And you combine that with the amazing camera work, the great performances, the costume design, which really needs to be appreciated too. Everything sort of becomes this grandiose film. And I think this is where his work is. It feels like an experience at the cinema watching a Robert Eggers film. Now, my screening, this Call of God, was sold out yesterday. 1 p.m, okay, it's New Year's Day, it's a bank holiday, but I did not expect this to be sold out. I thought maybe we're lucky, it'd be a third full. I don't know how commercially viable this film's going to be, but it seems like it's blowing away, which is great. And I'm all for people going to the cinema, and it feels like there are more people hearing about this, talking about this, and I hope that those numbers can continue to grow. I didn't get to see it in IMAX. I'd love to have seen this in IMAX. Maybe I'll go again, but it's just a really exciting time to be, a fan of his work. For a fan of film, this year is looking much better in terms of filmmaking, film releases. I think this is a perfect start to it, if I'm honest. And even with his next project, he's going to be doing Labyrinth, whether it's a remake, whether it's a sequel, who knows. You told me the Labyrinth film, I wouldn't have cared. I'd have said why. That's my question, why? But then it's a Robert Eggers Labyrinth film. I'm just sat there like, okay, who's Willem Dafoe going to play? Who's this person going to be? How is he going to do this? How are the creatures going to look? And suddenly I'm excited. And I don't get that like that with many filmmakers anymore. Gareth Edwards' Jurassic Park is a great comparison. Couldn't care less about another Jurassic Park. Why? Gareth Edwards is involved. Okay, I'm in. It doesn't matter. I'm in. And I think that's a really exciting thing to have. So that's going to sort of round out a review on Nosferatu. I guess I should go, do I recommend this film? Yes, I absolutely do. Go see it at the cinema. Get it pitch black, get the right audience, people being respectful, having their phones off, being quiet. You can really take in, because there's an atmosphere to it. There's an atmosphere to the filmmaking. And that transitions so well into that cinematic experience. And as I said, I don't think it's a talent many filmmakers do as much these days. So that's my glowing review. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope I haven't waffled too much. As I said, comment your thoughts on Nosferatu if you liked it. Maybe you didn't like it. I'm curious to know what people think. Your thoughts on Robert Eggers. As I said, it's the start of 2025. This is my second attempt at recording this review. I hope you've all enjoyed it. We'll be back, as I said, with a live stream tomorrow. We're going over everything we watched in December. Maybe we'll be announcing a couple of other things as well. So that's going to do it for me today. Once again, thank you all so much for watching, for sticking with us, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.